Something big just happened in Africa, something most of the world didn't expect, and even fewer are ready to talk about. It didn't happen with protests in the streets. It didn't involve tanks, soldiers, or breaking news alerts. No, this shift came with a single decision, signed into law quietly but boldly, and it's changing everything. Burkina Faso just did what many African nations have been scared to do for decades. It drew a line in the sand and said, "This land is ours fully, completely, and forever." In a world where land has become a playground for powerful outsiders, where foreign companies and old colonial families still control huge pieces of African soil, one country finally said, "Enough." Under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traore, Burkina Faso has officially declared every inch of its land state-owned, not shared, not negotiable, not for sale. And while that move alone is huge, it's not even the part that's turning heads across the globe. The real shock is what comes next, how this land will be used, who will benefit, and what it means for the future of African independence. This isn't just about ownership, it's about rewriting the rules of development, power, and access. Burkina Faso citizens aren't just the preferred buyers, they're the only buyers. So now the world is watching. Some are panicking, others are quietly applauding. But most are just trying to figure out what this bold move really means. Because when a nation claims its land, it's not just taking back soil, it's taking back its future. Let's break down what's happening in Burkina Faso and why this could be one of the most important shifts in modern African history. This has nothing to do with foreign businesses. This move is also about fixing the quiet but deep unfairness that has long existed inside the country, where small farmers beg for tiny plots, while the wealthy hold onto massive areas of land. Now, instead of focusing on ownership, the new rule gives everyone an equal shot at access. And that's what matters: access and opportunity. For too long, land reform has been stuck in endless meetings, paperwork, speeches, and empty promises. Burkina Faso decided to skip all that. The government didn't just change the system, it took control of it. No more acting like a land broker. Now, it plays the role of guardian. Why? Because when land is treated like just another thing to buy and sell, it almost always ends up in the hands of the rich, not the people who truly need it. That's what's happened across Africa. Foreign companies get huge areas for very little, and local people are pushed out of their own homes and lands for projects they never asked for. Imagine you're a powerful international company trying to get land in West Africa. You've got the money, you've got the influence, but now you're told flat out, you can never own this land, no matter how much you offer, ever. That's not just inconvenient, it turns the whole system upside down. Big businesses call it a threat, but Burkina Faso calls it healing. This reform reconnects people to their land in a way that's older and deeper than contracts and sales. Long before colonization, land in Africa meant more than just property. It meant belonging. And this new policy applies to all types of land, not just farms. Cities, mining zones, rivers, forests, spiritual sites, it all matters. Because now, land isn't just something to use, it's something to protect, a shared trust. And for generations, that trust has been broken. Of course, critics are already complaining. Some say this kind of policy will scare off investors. Others, relying on laws written under colonial rule, say it's illegal. But President Traore isn't backing down. He knows the real issue isn't money leaving the country, it's people staying. Staying on their farms, staying in their hometowns, staying close to their roots, without fear of being forced out. When people stay, they invest, they build, they grow. And that's the quiet power behind this reform. It's not anti-progress, it's just progress without exploitation. By removing land from the marketplace, Traore is forcing the world to have a different conversation. One where investors must respect the needs of the people, not the other way around. And this isn't just about making bold political moves. It's smart planning, too. When the state owns all the land, it can plan better. Roads, schools, and hospitals don't have to work around private estates. Absent landowners can't block national projects. The entire map can be redrawn to serve the people, not corporations. And this is only the beginning. Because writing a new law is one thing, but making it real, that's the next challenge. Changing generations of poverty, mismanagement, and exploitation. That's a whole different kind of battle. Yes, the land has been reclaimed, but now comes the real work. Bringing it back to life. It needs to be reconnected with the people who were pushed off it. Handed to those who never had the chance to work it. Transformed for those who've only ever seen it as a way to survive, not as something that gives power. The laws have been passed, the decisions have been made, the news has been reported. But land alone doesn't set people free. Because without support, owning land just becomes another challenge in a much bigger fight. That's why the hardest part starts now. Burkina Faso has claimed its soil, drawn its lines, and taken control. But what comes next is giving that land to people who can grow food on it, build on it, live on it, and truly benefit from it. And Traore's government understands this deeply. This isn't about making headlines, it's about making harvests. The goal isn't to collect land for show, it's to open it up with purpose. Taking the land back was just the beginning. The real change is in how it's shared. This time, it's not the wealthy or connected who come first. It's the everyday people who've been left out for far too long. All across Burkina Faso, small farmers have worked the land for years without ever owning it. They've been renting from foreign companies or distant landlords who cared more about profits than people. Now, the state is giving those farmers land not as a handout, but as a way of making things right. It's not just land, it's also access to farming programs, shared water systems, and training on how to grow smarter in a changing climate. Because land without tools is just dirt. Next up, women's cooperatives. In most African countries, women do the bulk of the farming but own almost nothing. That changes now. Traore's policy gives women's groups direct access to land, whether for crops, livestock, or small agricultural businesses. This isn't just empowerment. It's a smart economic move. When women have land, whole communities benefit. Kids stay in school longer, incomes grow, food becomes more reliable. This isn't guesswork, it's proven. And then there's the youth. Most of Burkina Faso's people are under 17. For years, that's been seen as a problem. Too many young people, not enough jobs. But what if it's actually an opportunity? The government sees it that way. Young people are now being given access to state-managed land tied to job training and farming programs, not just to grow food, but to build businesses. Agri-tech, seed labs, solar drying, vertical farms, smart irrigation. This is the new vision. Instead of fleeing to the cities for jobs that don't exist, young people can return to their roots with pride and make a living doing it. And here's the smart part. Burkina Faso isn't shutting out the world. Foreign investors are still welcome, but now they must go through state channels and follow the country's goals. Long-term leases, not ownership. Local benefit, not just exports. This means vast areas of land will no longer be used to grow flowers for European markets or to ship avocados overseas. Now, the focus is on feeding Burkina Faso first. The goal has shifted from growing crops for profit to growing food that provides stability, nutrition, and independence. Africa is choosing to stop nourishing the world while its own people go hungry, a bold change that many in the West aren't ready to accept. And this shift isn't just about farming, it's about industry too. Because land reform isn't only about who grows what, it's also about where that food is processed, how it's packaged, and who benefits from selling it. Under this new plan, local businesses and African-owned companies will be prioritized over foreign giants when it comes to using land for factories and processing zones. This means we'll start seeing local brands of tomato paste instead of imports from Italy. Local grain mills instead of relying on Chinese supply chains. It's a complete circle. Grow it here. Process it here. Eat it here. But this isn't about shutting the world out. It's about building smart and choosing who gets access, on what terms, and for whose benefit. And perhaps the biggest win of this new land system is something very simple. Clear rules. When the state manages land, keeps national records, and stops selling ownership rights, confusion fades. Fights over borders, land titles, and family inheritance start to go down. With fewer court cases, bribes, and forced evictions, people can finally plan for the future. You can't build a house, raise animals, or grow crops on land you're scared to lose overnight. Burkina Faso is making a bold bet that by protecting the land, they're protecting lives. Of course, it won't be easy. The country still faces poor infrastructure, climate issues, and deep-rooted corruption. But for the first time in decades, the rules are being rewritten. Land isn't a luxury anymore. It's not a gift. It's a right. And it comes with responsibility. This is just the beginning. Now, other African nations are watching closely. From Harare to Algiers, from Nairobi to Lagos, leaders are quietly asking the same question. Could this be the way forward? Could land finally belong to the people, not foreign buyers? And what happens if this idea starts to spread? If you think Burkina Faso is doing this alone, you're missing the bigger picture. This land reform didn't just come out of nowhere. It was born out of a continent that is waking up, rising up, and demanding change. And at the center of that awakening, South Africa. In 2024, South Africa brought land reform back into the spotlight with more energy than ever before, stronger even than during the post-apartheid years. And this time, it wasn't just a domestic issue. It made waves across the world. By challenging long-standing land laws and pushing for land to be returned to Black South Africans without paying compensation, President Ramaphosa's government triggered global reaction. Western investors were alarmed. White landowners pushed back. Then came Donald Trump. He stunned African leaders by threatening to cut off U.S. financial support if South Africa moved forward with the land seizures. He accused the country of racism and called it a land theft. He even tried to turn the land reform movement into an international showdown, dragging Elon Musk into the drama. But South Africa didn't back down. In 2025, they doubled their efforts pushing new policies, expanding their land courts, and starting programs that allowed land to be taken without paying compensation. Was it messy? Absolutely. Was it perfect? Not at all. But it was bold. And that courage sparked something. Other African leaders saw something they hadn't witnessed in years, a government standing up to the West, unapologetically reclaiming its land. Burkina Faso was paying close attention. When Captain Ibrahim Traore moved to nationalize all land in early 2025, it wasn't just a bold move. It was a continuation of what South Africa had started. But this time, there were no drawn-out court battles, no political gridlock, and no foreign diplomats trying to stop the process. Just a single law, one policy. And overnight, everything changed for millions of people. Burkina Faso wasn't doing something brand new, it was just moving faster. While South Africa was tied up in courtrooms, Burkina Faso was taking action in the streets. Where Ramaphosa fought with diplomacy, Traore moved with legislation. Where one paused, the other speed up. But this isn't about competition. It's about teamwork across the continent, a kind of baton passing between countries with very different systems, but the same goal: to return Africa's land to its people. What began as South Africa's battle is now becoming an African idea. The conversation is growing across Namibia, Kenya, and beyond. Young activists are talking about Burkina Faso in schools. Legal advocates are referencing South Africa's firm stance in courtrooms. And farmers who've never owned land are starting to ask a powerful question. If they can do it, why can't we? Of course, the fight looks different in every country. South Africa faces strong institutions, international media pressure, and powerful foreign investors. Burkina Faso, meanwhile, is recovering from years of instability, global isolation, and military upheaval. But now they're united by one clear belief: land isn't a product to be sold. It's a matter of dignity, of independence. And outside pressure isn't a reason to stop. It's a reason to go faster. Right now, Burkina Faso is under the same global microscope that South Africa faced in 2024. There's criticism, warnings about economic fallout, even veiled threats from powerful countries. The faces are different, the voices are different, but the resistance is the same. And now, what started as one nation's internal policy is becoming a shared strategy across Africa. If this movement continues to grow, it could shake the very foundation of Africa's post-colonial economy and rebuild it in a way that serves the people. So, no, this revolution didn't start in Burkina Faso, but it found speed, direction, and clarity there. The question isn't whether land reform is Africa's future anymore. That decision has been made. The question now is, how far will this go? Will African nations move forward together, or will global pressure divide them one by one? Because the moment an African country reclaims control over its own land, the whole world seems to notice. You can feel it. The tension in boardrooms in London, the nervous phone calls in Brussels, the warning messages passed quietly from Washington to African capitals. It's always the same story. Someone in the West labels African land reform as a threat to stability. But this time, no one's listening. Burkina Faso didn't pass this law to win applause. It wasn't looking for approval. It wasn't trying to start a fight. It did what had to be done because the old system was broken beyond repair. For too long, African countries were told to play nice, open their markets, follow IMF advice, sell off their resources, rent out their land, and wait for aid in return. But the time for waiting is over. For a long time, African land was treated like a business deal bought and sold between companies, while the people who lived on it were pushed aside. But when Ibrahim Traore signed the new land law, he wasn't just changing a few rules, he was breaking that cycle completely. And, of course, it didn't take long for reactions to pour in. Western media called it irresponsible. Policy experts said it was dangerous. Whispers began that Burkina Faso might end up cut off from the global economy. Projects were paused. Embassies hinted at consequences. But Traore didn't back down because he's not fighting this battle alone. He's not the first, and he won't be the last African leader to stand firm instead of selling out his country. South Africa faced similar backlash when it pushed forward with land reforms to undo the long shadow of apartheid, which left millions without land. Burkina Faso is now in the thick of a similar fight, but with less support and more urgency. It's not just one country taking back its land that worries the West. It's the fear that others will follow. Already, Mali and Niger have joined Burkina Faso, working together to free themselves from French financial control and starting a joint economic system. Zimbabwe, once criticized for its land policies, is being looked at in a new light not as a mistake, but as a sign of where Africa might be heading. Across the continent, leaders are realizing that sanctions are just another step in the struggle, not the end. Sanctions are meant to break African economies, but all they really do is show how nervous the West has become. After losing outside support, Burkina Faso began growing its own food and rebuilding its industries. When foreign companies threatened to leave, the country didn't panic, it smiled. Because this time, the land stays with the people. Now, it truly belongs to the people of Burkina Faso. The road ahead won't be easy. Outside forces won't disappear quietly. There will be economic pressure, sabotage, and backdoor deals disguised as market forces. But African leaders are waking up to these tricks. And so are the people. They remember when leaders gave in to outside pressure, when whole villages were cleared for mines or plantations. But this time, the people aren't just watching. They are the movement. Yes, the West can pull ambassadors, block trade, and slap on sanctions. But today's African leaders have already weighed the risks. The real danger isn't being cut off from Europe. It's losing the trust of your own people. From Ouagadougou to Pretoria, leaders who understand this are doing more than forming alliances. They're building trust. The days of quiet submission in Africa are over. The message is clear. No amount of sanctions, threats, or propaganda can stop this. The time for doubt has passed. Africa is rising not in anger, but with purpose. So, do you think Traore can be intimidated? Can African countries be stopped? What if more nations follow Burkina Faso's lead? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more videos like this, hit that bell icon and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.